Hi everybody, I'm Philip VanDusen, and today we're going to talk about communication hierarchy for entrepreneurs and creative professionals. So my goal for this channel is to translate conceptual branding techniques and methodologies that Fortune 100 companies use and global branding design agencies use and translate them so entrepreneurs and creative professionals can use them to the benefit of their own brands. So today we're going to talk about communication hierarchy. What is communication hierarchy? Well, it's basically the organization and prioritization of content as a means to communicate a message. So have you ever gone to a site and really been confused about what to do or what to look at, or have just too much to look at? Well, that's a failure of communication hierarchy. What it is information overload, and it's fairly commonplace on the web and in a lot of marketing materials. So we're barraged every day with tons and tons of information and impressions on our eyes and our brains with visual information. People are hypersensitive to visual stimuli and to communication. So becoming a master of communication hierarchy and visual design hierarchy isn't just optional, it's of absolute importance to entrepreneurs and to creative professionals. We have computer monitors, smartphones, tablets, desktop computers, even television as visual stimuli. And it's important to be able to create communication marketing messaging that's effective and prioritized across all of these medium. So what do we start with? Well, we have content. And what is content made up of? It's made up of words, copy, and images and or graphics. And what we have to do is prioritize them. In this slide, this is a very basic schematic of what no communication hierarchy looks like. So just a paragraph of unformatted text, and to the right-hand side, prioritized or formatted information that creates a hierarchy. So it's using formatting, it's using title or scale, it's using headlines, it's using imagery, and it's using proximity, white space, etc. in order to draw your eye around that space. So communication hierarchy is actually achieved by using visual design hierarchy. Design and content equals communication. So in this quick graphic, your content is what you have to say, so what the thing says. Design is how it's perceived. And how those things interact with each other, the content and the design, is what is actually communicated. So design basically equals communication. There's a misperception that design is just aesthetics. It's not just colors and shapes and font. Design is actually used to create communication. So your web page, your social media, your presentations, your podcasts, your videos are all methods of communicating something to your customer. And to improve your communication, you need to adjust the visual weights or the auditory weights in terms of sound for the elements that you have to create a level of hierarchy in your communication. So a very quick example of kind of how it works is if you look at this text on the right, when you read it, you read that headline that's in black first, and then you might read that secondary text that's in gray. You work your way down in the size of fonts or brightness of fonts, and even maybe jump to the script text that's on an angle with an arrow because it adds a little bit of special attention. This is how visual hierarchy works using design. So you need to ask yourself, what are the goals of your communication? So when a customer comes to your site, you need to ask, what is it that person is looking for? Where is it? And how do they complete their task? So what do you want me to do? When we look at this example of GoDaddy's website from a number of years ago, about the only thing that you get is the picture of the woman and $1.99 domains. Everything else is just noise because it's all communicating at exactly the same level. Visual hierarchy is where you want the eye to go. So how do you want it to travel around the plane of information? And in what order does what go where? So in this example, Here's a fake ad for a widget. The big, bold headline at the top, lowest price ever, is obviously the loudest communication on the page. So your eye goes there first. Then might travel down to the illustration of the widget, or possibly next, the address and the name of the company and the sale date. You might then jump up to the subtitle under the headline, or possibly to the paragraph of descriptive text. So that's visual hierarchy. The use of those elements, the space, the size, the scale, it's what's creating the traveling of your eye around that space. So let's talk about prioritization. Take, for example, if there were 4 people in a room and they were all talking at exactly the same level. You wouldn't be able to tell what any of them are saying because you wouldn't be able to discern the difference between all of the words. Now, if you change the level or the volume of each one of those speakers, make one of them louder, one of them shouting, one of them whispering, you should be able to differentiate the messages of the communication across those 4 people. Humans have an amazingly innate power of perception once things are differentiated. So what we do in communication hierarchy is we do that editorially, and we also do that visually. Here's an example of a very old website from havenworks.com. I don't even know if they still exist, but there are 1,000 people in this room, and they're all talking at the same level. There's absolutely no way to discern any kind of visual prioritization across this website, and there is so much being said. Everything is talking at one volume. And now let's talk about how to establish that communication hierarchy. The first thing you want to do is make a list of all the things that you want to communicate to your customer. They could be things like brand, the name of your company, or motivators, a need that needs to be met, or a call to action, something that you want them to do, or a list of your products, or a list of your product's benefits and features. Make a list of all those things that you want to communicate, and then create an order and number them 1 through 5, 1 through 7, of the order that you think of the importance is that you get across to your customer. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use visual design methods and elements in order to create that hierarchy in that communication. And here's some of the design elements that we need and that we can use. You can use things like size, so make certain objects bigger than other objects, like images, fonts, shapes, icons, vary them in size. You can also use color. So color can be used in 2 ways. It can be used as an organizational tool to add interest to something, or it can be used as a personality tool or an emotional tool because certain colors mean certain things emotionally. You can use contrast or value, so that's the difference in visual weight between things. You can use shape. So for instance, on lots of packages, there are things called bursts, which are little star-shaped things that says sale or whatever that you see in in-store marketing. That's using shape as a communication hierarchy tool using a design element. Proximity, so how close things are to each other. Alignment, so whether they're jumbled up or whether they're all in a straight line. Those sort of things can also be used as design elements. Repetition, so things in order or used over and over again in the grid. You can use density, so things close together, or even white space with lots of distance between things to add interest or to add focus to particular design elements. And you can also use things like style and texture. So how do we assess our visual communication and our visual design hierarchy? Sometimes it's really hard to tell what your communication hierarchy is visually. And there's a trick that I like to use called the squint test. And that is when you squint your eyes at something, a piece of marketing material, a website, and you put it out of focus. And when you do that, what happens is the things that are most visually striking have a tendency to jump out at you easier. So if we look at this website, when we squint our eyes and put it out of focus, what we see is a picture of a woman. We also see a picture, a number, 30 days, or a price, $200. But apart from that, all of the other elements of this design are operating at the same volume or the same level, and you don't really know where to go with your eyes next. Here's another example of a friend of mine who's got a site called The Podcast Host. And it's a very well-designed site, and the communication hierarchy is very clear. It starts off with, "We help you podcast," and then there's a secondary line of text under that. It jumps quickly to his product offerings, so 3, 4, and 5 done in a grid, so it's organizational, and that alignment helps you travel across the plane visually. You might go down to 6, where you see the podcasts or the episodes, and then you'd pop up to number 7, to the brand. Now the brand, his logo is a very delicate looking logo, so it has a tendency to fall back visually. And so that's kind of a test to use to how to evaluate how your hierarchy is working. Some things to remember are we definitely want to make intentional decisions about prioritizing our content. So making that list is really important. We want to be crystal clear on what we want to communicate to our consumers or customers and in what order we want to communicate it. Where do we want our audience to look first? And also, what is that call to action? What do you want to draw attention to? What do you want them to do? And then lastly, what is the emotion that you want them to have as they experience it? So to summarize, we'll use this GoDaddy example again. In the before shot, there's no communication hierarchy or very little. Your eye really doesn't know where to travel. There's too much information, and because all of the information is given the same importance, everything kind of flattens out. It's like saying you have 10 favorite kinds of ice cream. In the after example, you can see that a level of importance has been given to all of those elements, and the elements don't have to compete with each other for attention. It lets the content shine and gives you a very clear idea of what you need to do and where you need to go. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly had fun sharing the information with you. If you liked it, hit subscribe below, and that way you can be notified when my videos come out. Also visit me at philipvandusen.com. I'd love to interact with you on your brand. And while you're there, share your email address, and you can get on my mailing list for my newsletter, which is called Brand MUSE, and comes out every 2 weeks, where I share branding insights and resources and inspiration for entrepreneurs and creative professionals. So with that, again, thanks for watching, and bye for now.